stories turn songs into symphonies, events into memories, and lives into legends. In our crowded world, knowing your story cuts through the noise so you can make your mark, whether you want to sell more books, increase profits, or just make a difference. At Sterling & Stone, story is our business. The Story Studio podcast is where we explore ways we can all tell our stories better. And now, with the Story Studio podcast number 14, here's Johnny, Sean, and Dave.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Story Studio podcast. Wanted to begin this episode. This is the first episode in an arc as we do these now, and we're going to talk about our foundations and getting started, sort of as a way of catching everybody up. If this is your first episode, what Sterling & Stone is all about, because we have some really amazing things we want to kind of roll with and take you guys along on the journey. But first, we want to make sure that everybody kind of knows where we've been. We can't tell you the next steps without telling you the first steps. So this first 6 episode arc that we're going to do is going to be sort of foundations and starting right. It's our startup. It's discussing the lessons we learned in the first years of Sterling & Stone. It's got to be coming up on like 7 years now or something that we've been working together. And so a lot of lessons learned in those years to really establish our foundation going forward.
Yeah, context is really everything. I mean, it's super important. And for us, this is, like Johnny said, Sterling & Stone is just about easing into its 7th year. But the three of us as a whole, this is our 10 years. Like we're just approaching, we all started it like within months of each other online. And we've all had very different but very similar trajectories as well. Especially the last 7 years, we've shared them. So among the three of us, we're bringing 30 years of kind of online storytelling experience. This is kind of what we've discovered. And I mean, like, honestly, if you've listened to us for any length of time, you know how many mistakes we've made and you know how quickly we've learned from them. If you are just here for the first time, buckle up. We're going to make more mistakes, but we're going to make a lot fewer of them than we ever have before. We're really dialed in right now, and the company has kind of been reborn, and we are very allegiant to our hedgehog concept. And if you don't know what that is, we got a whole episode about it. Right, exactly. And that's the joy of being able to tell this sort of narrative. Is we're one of the large reasons that all three of us write. In fact, I would say everybody in the company writes, and we are, a company of writers. Then one of the primary reasons we do what we do is to learn. We do it to learn how we feel about things and to kind of figure things out. Especially Johnny and I, when we write nonfiction, we really are writing to figure things out. But when we write fiction, it's the same thing. We're basically making an argument to ourselves. And sometimes you tell a story to understand a story. And so these next episodes are for us as much as they are for you. We're telling ourselves this story because it's a nice place to start at a new ground zero and feel the fact that, okay, let's take a deep breath. We're just inches away from kind of a 10-year anniversary. And, it's been 7 years for, I mean, 7's a biblical number. This is big. We've actually are right now stepping.
Yeah, but every number is significant to you. You can find something significant about everything.
Well, that is very.
We're going to get to 300, and you're going to be like, "Oh, it's a Thermopylae."
That's true. I could call it the Thermopylae Project. But for real, it's a nice way for us now to give context to everything that we're going to be doing, because we're doing the things that we've been talking about 7 years ago are actually now really slotting into place. And we've said for a long time now, 2018 is our year. And we mean that in a lot of different ways. And right now, the most significant way that we mean that is we know what our company is. We know what we're good at. We know what we're going to do. We know who like our team is comprised of, and we know what our next several months looks like. And so I guess the best place to start is just kind of exploring what it means to be a story studio.
Dave, do you write to figure things out as you go? I hadn't thought of that until Sean said. We do say that a lot, but I realized how true that is for me.
Yeah, definitely. Like I'll come up with an outline, and it's not really until I start writing it that I'm actually like in the world and feeling it in a way that makes it better, which Sean loves when I change up the outline.
Oh, it's so bad, especially when there's dead babies on Christmas. It's like a Christmas for me.
I used to do that in school when we'd have some sort of persuasive essay. It was about like, I didn't know my position going in, but I'd figure it out. And that's actually a really interesting way, I think, to think about the podcast in general, is like, let's articulate for ourselves what this company is really about.
But Johnny, isn't that what it was 7 years ago?
Yeah, it's what it, I guess we didn't think of it in those terms, but that's very much what it was.
But with hindsight, that's absolutely what it was, and that's what it got away from, and that's what it deserves to be again, because that's when it was most. I mean, there's a direct parallel there. When it was most exciting for us, that's when it was most exciting for our audience too. And by the more we turn the focus away from us, because there was that cry after a while. All you guys do is talk about yourself. Right. And so we became very conscious about that, especially Johnny. Dave's response was like, well, kind of fuck this. Let's pull back. And like, I don't even want to be there anymore. And Johnny was like, well, let's make sure that we're constantly asking the question, what is our listener thinking? What is in it for them? But the more we tried to do a great job and attend to that audience, the more we pulled away from ourselves and would actually kind of grease the engines. And so rebooting the company as we are means paying attention to every little part, and the podcast has always been really like a core component.
Permission to talk about ourselves.
Johnny's been waiting for this forever. It's Christmas for Johnny too.
Speaking of talking about ourselves, a lot of times we forget that any episode could be somebody's first episode, and Dave's been saying for a while that every once in a while we should introduce ourselves. So there are three voices on the podcast. I'm Johnny.
I'm Sean.
And I'm Dave, also known as Beelzebub. Beelzebub.
Yes, that is true.
Beelzebub, yeah. Beelzebub's weirder brother.
Chestier cousin.
And if you don't know, Dave's the largest among us, and he actually has Beelzebubbies. Why couldn't make the Beelzebubie joke otherwise?
I don't know. That was hard fought, though.
Wow.
Yeah, it wasn't like I wasn't just randomly
saying it was a slam dunk. He ran around setting up chairs to jump off that one. All right. So what we wanted to talk to, like we said today, is to sort of set foundations. I like the idea of sort of framing this as in terms of things that we've worked to consciously decide and refine over the past 6 or 7 years. We never know exactly how to define the length of time for this company. Sean is very fond of referring to his, quote, stupid internet anniversary, which always has the adjective stupid in the beginning. And it's necessary. And it's July 17th, and I have no reason to know that except that I've heard it 1,000 times, my stupid internet, because we've set things to go off on the anniversary.
You didn't get the tattoo on your arm?
I do.
We all got it.
I do. I have it. I have it somewhere else.
Okay, that's maybe one of 3 tattoos I would get, actually. I'd get that date. That date's fantastic.
So anyway, so that would be 10 years coming up now, I believe. And but there's, the length of time we've been working together, the length of time that we've sort of been Sterling and Stone rather than just 2 different pairs of writers, Sean and Dave and me and Sean. And then I wrote independently for a while before that. So but whatever. It's been, say, 6 to 7 solid years, and there's a lot that we've learned. What's the metric where they say that most startups fail within what amount of time? It's a short time, right? The first 2 hours.
Yeah. It's the first year. The startups that actually make it and then are successful, I don't know what the odds are, but they are not with you at all. But another metric that I really like, and it's funny because I was writing this at one point, I was trying to think of who said this, and I looked it up, and like 1 million people said it. It's most people overestimate what they can do in 1 year, but underestimate what you can do in 10. Right. And if you go back 10 years ago, I grossly overestimated what I could do in a year. Right. Like, no, I couldn't even save.
He actually does that every year.
That's true. Yes. But now, but 10 years ago, there's no way I could have conceived of the breadth of Sterling and Stone and all that we're doing now. Like, I just couldn't have. And so that's kind of neat. Like, that's really held true. And I think that the container that we have now for all those lessons is substantial.
So, I think that there's another thing too that I've noticed is full circle, and we'll talk about some of this too, is there are things now that we're realizing that in retrospect we realized, maybe in air quotes, at the beginning. And then we got away from them, and then we're like, oh, that's a revelation. We should do that. Like
the podcast.
Well, like the podcast, but also the fact that we should be focusing on story and not a lot of other stuff that we used to focus on, even though we've come full circle on that. And we've all argued it to varying degrees. Well, we should, we shouldn't. So it's just really interesting. And one of the ones, so I'm going to start off on one of the things, I'm going to pull something here. Values as a company. Oh, the reason that I mentioned the how long do startups last is, or how often do they fail, blah, 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 is because the fact that we're still here means I think that we have something to say on this. Like that mere fact.
Yeah.
So
we could still fail though, right? I mean, within a certain amount of time. What's the window for a startup to fail?
Oh, well, you get to a certain point and then you can't fail. That's the way it works. I'm pretty sure. You get to a point where you're safe and you've done enough. That's
too big to fail.
Well, you get to a point where you're no longer a startup, and we're at the edge of that. You know, like a year from now, 2 years from now, maybe is safer to say, more reasonable. But there's going to come a
yeah.
Well, yes, we're queuing you up, Dave. I know you're very uncomfortable not on the inner rings of failure, so we're going to do what we can to get there eventually. But yeah, I think at one point. And that's the journey that we're on right now. We're at the far edges of that, where we're growing up, and we're less startup now. And our last hire, which was a great hire, was straight up HR. Like Robin, Johnny's wife, was doing it before then, but she's not an HR person. We actually hired an HR person for our company.
No, neither I nor my wife should be within miles of HR. It's so not our personalities.
Yeah, and we have somebody who's perfect for it.
I don't know why.
We would have let you. We just asked you to document everything, like on camera, and stream it.
Nails.
He's taken over for Donald Trump in the Apprentice role, just telling everybody they're fired.
But I use actual fire.
You're on fire. Okay, so embracing our values, right? So we have this whole thing with the company where we want to lean into our superpowers. We define superpowers as things that we are very good at and can be kind of the best at, and things that are enjoyable to us. And so as a company, some of our superpowers, or I guess just values, but also the things that we do best at when we really kind of make them a priority, is certainly creative, but also fun. And that, I guess I'm starting that way for a reason, because it feels like the sort of thing that you'd be like, well, I mean, how many people have, I think Dave, you said that your dad told you that like nobody should have fun at work. Work shouldn't be fun.
Work isn't fun. It's a job. Do it and shut your mouth.
But we've prioritized, like many times we've made decisions, let's not do that because it's not fun. And then the times that we've said, well, it's not fun, but let's do it because it's best, they're usually the wrong choice, and we go back to what's fun.
Can you think of any that were the right choice?
Maybe in the short term, or maybe after all was said and done. I mean, I'm a big believer that the path that you take got you to where you are.
Oh, no, I agree. But considering where we are right now, and where we all have decided that this is collectively where we belong, do you think that those things that we did for probably the wrong reasons, if you think about it, were ever right?
No, but yeah.
Other than getting us to where we needed to go. So it's all a journey, it's all a process, and it's all worth it. But I think that part of growing up is exactly that. It's not just getting to the point where you're financially solvent and you have to hire, HR and all of that. It's also in what you decide, the risks that you can afford to take become less about money and more about culture, like you said, right? Like if we've decided that it is a core cultural tenet that we need to have fun, and our projects really need to be fun first and story first, then the moment we see that we're slipping away from that, we have to ask ourselves, why are we doing this, and what are we hoping to get?
Right. And also leaning into creativity. I mean, that's the thing. Like, we do story. We're a story studio. What does it mean to be a story studio? Well, it means that we do story. Our 6-word intro is we change the world with story. Actually, why don't you give the explanation for that, Sean? Because you said that it's kind of a conversation starter, and that people are like, what the hell do you mean you change the world with story? What does that mean?
Well, It used to be.
We saved the world. You didn't realize that?
Well, you're
there
joking,
was a
but
different timeline going on, and we actually stepped in and saved the world.
some guy came in front of us with shopping carts at Target.
Yes.
We branched off.
Branched a whole new branch of reality. I know it's a grandiose statement, but that's okay. I feel like we're kind of a grandiose company. We like to say things like we're going to do things that haven't been done, and we're trying to live on the edges of what a creative career can offer anyone. And so I'm okay with the grandiose statement, but we also mean it. Our company motto changed. It was, we make stories and smart artists, and that wasn't quite right. Like it wasn't quite right. And the longer that that was kind of our motto, we were divisible, and it didn't really help us to focus. And so now we change the world with story, and we ding things as much as possible. We always are trying to push the industry. We're trying to help the industry, but we are also very much, like I said earlier, we're answering questions in the stories that we create, but we're trying to put meaning into our work. We're changing our lives for sure. That's where we started, but it's our goal to change the lives of everybody who is in and orbits around our company. And we do that through story. So we can change stories with the messages that we have. Our goal is absolutely to just, have a lot of presence in the book world. But of course, we want to get into film and television. And I know that, as we watch film and television, all of us, it does inform the world. It informs conversation. It informs the way people think about things. If you look at shows like The Handmaid's Tale, I watched that with my daughter. It's actually, we just started the second season and we're watching that live, which normally we binge through things and we have to wait week to week. And, I like that now. There's a week of conversation. We're watching Breaking Bad with the whole family and we're always talking. It gives us a lot of things to plug into. And that's what culture does. That's what stories do. And if you look at perennial stories that come back over and over and over, they do have an influence on the way people think. And we want to be a part of that. And we want to be a strong part of that. And, even one tiny story can change the world in its own little way. And we are in the story business. We're making thousands of stories a year, not just the books that we print, but the stories that get told and passed on in and around and about our company. And we are absolutely determined to change the world in whatever way we can. And story is our superpower, and it's the way we choose to do it.
A meaningful life tells a story too. Story is a way of cutting through the clutter and the amount of activity that's in our day-to-day lives. Sometimes it feels like you're spinning your wheels. And if you have the idea of a story, sort of a thesis statement for your life, not to get too, you talk about grandiose, that's another thing.
Wait, can I hear Dave's thesis statement for his life? I'm just curious if he has one.
Look out.
We all die.
That's about right. Okay.
He's perfectly on trajectory because I guarantee that wherever he's going, he's going to reach that destination at some point.
Well, I like Dave's smart enough to build success into the mantra, right? Like you can't fail there no matter what. He is too big to fail.
Robots are going to take over the world and upload consciousnesses, and Dave's going to be like, motherfucker.
That's a little bit like being a fat vampire right there.
That would be.
Well, I am hoping to unload my, consciousness.
I really needed you to finish that sentence.
Yeah, I want to.
I want to split it.
You left that hanging a little too long.
I want to split it into two beings. One will be a robot that'll do all the shit I don't want to do, and the other will be me that'll just be, enjoying life.
Dave's going to unload his being into a robot. So another thing.
I hear they are already doing that in Japan.
Another hallmark of Sterling and Stone, another thing that we keep coming back to, because these guys have worked with me enough, and Sean especially has heard me say these sorts of things many times, is the fuckers. These guys are laughing like bastards. Is that if you have an idea of what the key thing is that you need to keep coming back to, then you can focus and you retrain your sights on where you're trying to go. And one of the things that we keep that guides us is that this is a family business. We actually have a sort of a private little podcast we've talked about a few times that's called Family Business. And this is, we think of our, the people in our company as family. We include our family, our literal families in the business. We behave as if it's a family. There's a lot of ethics within the business that we want to be able to be proud of everything that we do, because again, it's something that's family. It's not mercenary.
Yeah, that's always important to me. I grew up in a family business. I had a family business. I made my family a business when we had a preschool. Cindy and I had a preschool for several years so that we could raise Ethan and Haley and like kind of control their environment and their friends and their learning experience. And it was really awesome. And so I've never known anything other than a family business, really. Like I was born into it, never stepped away, and created my own, and then went online and did all this. So the idea that business, it's just like part of the fabric, like it permeates your life, and it's what you talk about at dinner, and you include your family in it, and you ask questions, and you pitch in and help. Like, Ethan's not really in a place where he could do much for the company, but like he'd be willing.
What good?
Right. Right. I know. But that's the thing. So I mean, Johnny touched on that, but like there's an integrity there too. Like you want to be able to have a healthy discussion about everything that you're doing in your business with anyone who asks. And I think that we're really proud that, I mean, we clearly are immature and make, stupid jokes like we just did a few minutes ago. And oh my God, every time I make a dirty joke like that, now I hear Parker scolding me, like every time. And so it's just, sorry, Parker. But we do have a family business, and we care very deeply about the message that we're sending. Not necessarily whether we have dirty jokes or not, because that honestly doesn't bother me. It's
I actually had that on one of our core goals, core values.
Right. I mean, it's because that's part of the fun. Like that's,
in all seriousness, it is part of it. There have been times when people have emailed us and said, "Man, I really like what you guys do, but you got to stop making the jokes or swearing." And we kind of say, "Well, you probably aren't right for us, because we're not going to stop."
Because the problem,
email us and say, I'm glad you do that, because so many other podcasts are boring, and that's part of the enjoyment. Doing God's work is what they say. Really, we're doing God's work.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's not just that you're reaching the right people, which I do absolutely believe that. I think that we need to come from a place of authenticity, and it's not like I can. It's not like I have Tourette's. Like I don't just swear, anytime. I do choose my words to match my environment. And my environment here is I'm talking with my friends and colleagues about our business in the most casual manner possible, because that's when I'm most free flowing. And that's how I'm going to deliver the best to the listener. And so we did get away from that. And that's the thing. It's like, as soon as we turn our focus on what are we best at and what is the most rewarding for us personally, and then, we really have the runoff there that can help.
What are we best at? Talking about ourselves.
Something like that.
When we overthink and we think too much about what we don't want to say, it really does stifle the conversation. It's like, it's the difference between giving a presentation in front of, your peers versus, maybe like an elementary school. You're going to have a completely different set. And one of them is going to be, more guarded, more careful, and I don't think you connect as well with that as you would just being yourself.
I'm telling the Japanese robot talk when I talk to my daughter's class in a couple of weeks.
Bring Sean with you.
Yeah.
I'll set you up. Not with a robot. I don't actually have one of those. I lost my train of thought. See,
okay. So another, I'm just kind of listing things that are core to us. So another is that we're built on collaboration. We actually started this company when, Sean and Dave were writing together, and I kind of came in and said, let's quote unquote collaborate on a podcast. Although I didn't say that, but that's what it was. Let's join forces. Let's talk. I was hoping to absorb from them, and then surprise, surprise, Sean and I started writing together, and we have. I mean, it depends how you count. We may have as many as 30 people sort of in our circle, maybe more, maybe less, but whatever. They're all collaborative sorts of arrangements. Even within even the sorts of deals that we make are collaborative in nature. They're a little like, what if we did this project together rather than we just buy this from you whenever we can? That's a foundation stone of Sterling and Stone as well.
Yeah, it's every single thing that we do is collaborative, including our vendors. With our cover artists, it's not simply we're placing orders. We're really trying to grow with them with every project. There is not a way that we do things at Sterling and Stone. I mean, there are obviously key denominators because you can't grow business without having some systems in place. But we're trying to develop different flows so that it's both, it's both templated, but really pliable. So for example, I don't think this will be the permanent name, but we're putting a process together right now so that Dave can write a book in one of our shared worlds, and he hasn't read past the wedding scene, nor is he going to. So don't let that stop him from writing in the world, right? So
that means that Dave hasn't read the books. That's what that means.
Right. Dave hasn't read the books because we asked him one time if he read Unicorn Western yet. And he said, well, I got to the wedding scene, and we laughed because that's page 2.
The book begins with the wedding scene.
Right. So
it's
awesome.
farther than I get in most books.
Well, huzzah. So, oh, damn it. There it goes again.
Distractibility. That was what we were working on.
Right. So we're going to have a story meeting and kind of figure out what story to tell within this world, and on and on. We've got all these different steps to finally get a finished outline that'll take about a month, and then we can hand Dave the finished outline. And right now, the working title for this flow is the Dave Flow. Right. And so, this is how we can work as a team.
Massive amounts of pudding and ice cream.
Yes, that's the Dave Flow. Awesome. So, we're going to have these different, okay, well, that one feels like it's going to work well for me. And then we'll adapt it to that author, because collaboration is something where, we've always said it's the thing where 1 and 1 doesn't get you 2, it gets you like 7 or 8 or 9. And now that, we're really focused on just story, and we're a story studio, we're able to go really fast because, we've got, at any given time, you can ask a question, for example, and, get 17, 18 people to respond to you to help you with that little story note that you need.
I did think about like starting to read the series before getting involved. And I was like, that's 7 books plus whatever else you guys got going on. And I thought, well, can't you just make it into a TV show so I can watch it quicker?
You could listen to them.
Yeah, we're working on that. You could listen to them.
I have yet to get into an Audible book or audio book. It's just, I don't know. I nonfiction ones are fine, but fiction ones, I don't know. I just
see, I wouldn't be able to enjoy fiction because I have to read so much fiction as part of the job that's like internal fiction.
I wish I could. I just can't disconnect. I think the narrator's voice is a barrier to me all the time. So
I hope the Dave Flow remains the Dave Flow. I was
done.
Have you ever gone to a water park and seen that Flow Rider thing? Have you ever seen those? I was just imagining the Dave.
I'm not
Flow
allowed
Rider.
At water parks.
That would be.
They think I'll knock all the water out or something.
Knock all the water out.
Cannonball.
Yeah.
Once in the wave pool and it's done.
All right, and then the last thing that I would mention here. There's a lot more to what sort of defines Sterling and Stone. But I would say that we really strive for open communication, which I think that all companies say, but we've put a real concerted focus on it, and especially the idea. We've done this for a while without having a name, but now that Jen and Sean have read Black Box Thinking, and I'm reading it too. I'm assuming Dave hasn't read it. He got to the wedding scene. I don't know.
He got to the wedding scene, yeah.
It now kind of has a name in my head, but it's something that we've always done. The idea of trying to learn from failures. We actually have something that 2016 was the year of failures. We'll actually talk a little bit about this, about what we call idea debt and idiot debt and all that stuff. I think it's in the next episode. But the 2016 was the year where we picked up a lot of the shit that we tripped over. And it was really, really aggravating in the beginning. And by the way, this continues, but in early 2016, it was nauseating. And my wife had to do a lot of that cleanup. And she doesn't do well with things that aren't in order. And I just kept saying, well, okay.
She should have stayed away from our place then.
I said, I know it's a huge mess. I know, but as long as we don't make the same mistake twice. I mean, how many times have I said that? Like 1,000 times.
That could be our mantra if it wasn't we change the world with story. I mean, really, we are perfectly comfortable making mistakes. We don't even call them mistakes. We call them experience, because that's what they are for us, as long as we only make them once.
Right. So basically, if you do something stupid and you, I don't know, it costs you a ton of money, just something that you did that was kind of dumb, I actually feel that that's fine, because it lets you identify what it is that you shouldn't do. Unless it's something you already know you shouldn't do. But if it identifies a new lesson, then it's like, oh, okay. I believe that everything happens for a reason within the context of this business, for sure, because the number of times that something hasn't worked and then we've turned around and said, oh, look what we can learn from this, it's always been a right positive change.
Oh, yeah. If you look at what we have right now, and maybe this is actually a really good cue into the next episode, because if you look at where we are right now, it's where we always wanted to be, but we took some major diversions, right? We took a very circuitous route to finally get to where, okay, well, this makes sense. Why weren't we here 5-6 years ago? Well, because we weren't really ready. We weren't really prepared. We didn't have the tools that we needed to understand where we needed to go. We had to make all those mistakes, and we had to iterate forward. So, we were talking about black box thinking. I think it says in the book that at one point, 25% of people who went up in the air died. And now it's like a statistical anomaly. Like, it just doesn't happen. And so that's because they document all their mistakes. That's because they're always learning. And I think that, yes, we're going to continue to make mistakes, but we're going to make fewer, and they're going to be less costly. And I think we're much, much better about staying in our lane than we've ever been.
And we have more and more opportunities to make mistakes. It used to be that Sean and I wrote together and Dave and Sean wrote together. And now, I think I said this, that 17 to 20 writers that the company is working with. We are indeed a full story studio. We've, had sold a bajillion books. I don't know how many, but a lot.
I think that's the right number.
Bajillion 16, I think.
Yeah.
We've made just about any mistake that you could make in publishing, as well as some nice successes. We've won audio awards. We've sold some film and TV options. We'll be able to talk about this sort of thing more and more. But we've had a lot of opportunity to learn, and we've had a lot of opportunity for success and failure. And I think the idea is embracing them both and just sort of trying to skirt that balance where your failures don't sink you, but embracing them. So anyway, in the next episode, I was sort of calling this Focus is Power. It's kind of a shitty title, but the idea of really narrowing down, focusing. We're going to hit that hedgehog concept idea that Sean mentioned, so just to tease about that, and really narrowing in on what it is that we do. And we'll talk about that in the next one. So stay tuned, and thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Story Studio Podcast. Are you wondering what the ever-growing demand for superb storytelling skills means for your future? Check out our latest interview as Johnny and Sean dive deep into that question in Storytelling is the Future, How to Build on Your Self-Publishing Success. Download the interview from the info box or show notes in YouTube, or head over to sterlingandstone.net/future.